Okay, welcome to the Netivot Shalom Shir. On the screen, you have a Netivot Shalom that the first 2 pages of it I actually taught 2 years ago. So I'm going to skip to the third page. But the title of it is Ravo Kulam B'Vris Yachad. Those are the words that come from one of the Shabbos zemirot, Yona Matzavo. And I think it's the third verse. It says, "Oh, kula b'vris yachad." They all come together under one covenant. Nasa v'nishma, amru kiachad. They all said Nasa v'nishma together. We will do and we will listen. We will do and then we'll learn. Upaschu, and then they began. Onu Hashem echad. They said, God is one. So this particular Netivot Shalom that we're going to be studying tonight really gives us the basic concept of how we go into Shavuot, how we get into Kabbalas HaTorah, what we need to do to have Kabbalas HaTorah, how we have to prepare ourselves, and what the main ingredient is. And I'm telling you at the outset that I am very troubled, not by what the main ingredient is, that I can see, but I'm troubled with how we can get everybody to use those ingredients in their lives. And you'll see what I'm talking about as we go through this. So I'm going to move this page down to the part that I didn't study 2 years ago. I try not to repeat this year in case your memory is good. You remember I did it last time. So I'm going to start with Gimel, which is the third. It has 4 different things on that particular phrase, Uval Kulam B'Vris Yachad. So we're going to start with the third one. Upaschu Anu Hashem Echad. And they began, they said, God is one. Haperush Kamar Tzadikim, as the righteous people say, Shahavtel Yisrael, Shahavas Yisrael, the love of all Bnei Yisrael, is Segula L'Ahavas Hashem. That is a Segula, a way to get you to love God. The Baal Shem Tov was once asked, how do you love Hashem? I mean, Hashem doesn't have a corpus, doesn't have a body. You can't see him. How do you love Hashem? How do you love something that you can't really touch and see and feel? The Baal Shem Tov answered, love your fellow man, and that will bring you to a love of Hashem. And that's what the Netivot Shalom is going to be talking about here. Binyan b'pashtut, and it's obvious. He says, Kilo yitakin la'ahov es Yisrael. It would not be possible for another person to love his fellow Jew, rak ka'asher Yehudi mavata yishuso, without nullifying your ego. A person whose ego is all involved with the love of himself or herself, he's not able to love anybody else because it's all about me. It's all the narcissistic. Shoresh. He says the root of all hatred and all fighting is ego. Everybody wants to show that they're all powerful, or that they know better, they're smarter than the next person, and that's the cause of hatred and machlokas. Anybody has even the slightest amount of egotism, he feels like everything is based upon what he does. Only when a Jew uproots and nullifies from himself as hayishus, the halting completely his ego, then he's ready to have in his heart only the love of Bnei Yisrael. Umimela, move on, it's certainly understood. Shezeh hamafteach, this is the key. Shal yado, through which hu mesugol lahagia gam le'ahavas Hashem, the key through which you can come to the love of God by loving Yisrael. וזה שאומר שבכוח בואם בבריס יחד, peace chubaru echad. And this is what it says, from the power of coming together as one bris, as one person, as one entity. Then they begin and they answer Hashem echad, God is one. Well, what is this? 1 second, sorry. And more than this, we can explain the Anyan Koach Harabim. What is the Inyan Koach Harabim? What is the aspect of the power of the many? The Yiddiv Emes, in truth, Eich Yochel Ha'adam HaChomri Lahasig Ahava Kedusha Ki Ahavas Hashem. How is a person who's wrapped in materiality, how is he able to reach a level of love and holiness in the love of Hashem? Kamo Shomar HaRambam, as the Rambam says, it's necessary, that the love of God should be burning so intensely in you, as Shlomo HaMelech said in Shir HaShirim, I am sick with my love for you. And Ein Zos, he says, this is only possible Ela b'koach ahavas Yisrael, through loving your fellow Jew. Shemisachet b'zeh, to unify with this in Klal Yisrael, with the entity of the Jewish people. Ki oz yochel lahasig ahavas Hashem, then you'll be able to reach the love of God, b'koach harabim, with the power of the many. Asher hu koach Elokim, the power of God, mimal, of above. She'emtzoso yecholim lahagil b'adrekos keilu she'ein liyochid shelatzmo kol shaychos lehem. With this power of the Rabbi, the power that you get from God, because of this power of Klal Yisrael, you're able to reach levels that you could never reach on your own. And so on. And that's what it means. Because we're all coming together in this one covenant with God. As their sages say, we are unified with one person and one heart. Through this unity, then we're able to say, as we did, Na'aseh v'nishma imru kechad, as one. They said, Hashem, you tell us what you want, and we will do it without even understanding it, and then we'll learn it. We will do Na'aseh v'nishma, and then we will learn. Na'aseh, the doing, hu inyan ahava. That's an aspect of love. She'osa af beloshin is tavo klal hakach, because you're doing it even though it hasn't yet been commanded. We don't know what you're going to command us to do, God, but we're telling you right now, whatever it is, we will do it. That is love. That is a demonstration of our love for God. B'chinas mamar HaKosov, as it says in Tehillim, Lasos ritzoncha Hashem chapatzti. My desire, God, is to do your will. Inni chapetz achar. I have no other desire. Rak lasos ritzoncha b'lvad. Only to do your rotzon, your desire alone. Rak ayidei uvo chula b'vris yachad. Only through coming together in one covenant, Yecholim lahasi b'chinas na'aseh v'nishma, shehu inyan ahavas Hashem. Can we come to the aspect of na'aseh v'nishma, which can only come about through the love of Hashem? Zeh she'amar Rabbi Akiva. This is what Rabbi Akiva said. Yahavtu l'riacha kamocha. Love your brother as yourself. Zeklal gadol b'Torah. This is a basic, general principle underlying the entire Torah, as it says in Yerushalmi, in the Gemara Nedorim. The Lechura, she says, "V'manis yachtos mitzvazu, yahaftu l'riacha kamocha." What makes this commandment, or this statement, this commandment of loving your neighbor like yourself, what does that make that? How does that make that unique, bishar mitzvos, from all other commandments? Shedavka hi klal gadol b'Torah. That this command of Yahavta Re'acha Kamocha is a great general principle in the Torah. You have to understand. Alo kedivrei. I'm not sure of that interpretation. I think it's Rabbi Chaim Vital, but I'm not sure. It's not like Rabbi Chaim Vital said, Lo nichtevu inyani midos b'Torah. He said, aspects of midos, the ethical qualities are not written in the Torah. He says, Mishum sha'Torah kodesh nitna rak l'zeh, because the Torah, that isn't the case, because the Torah is only given to this person, shekvar zikoch midosam, who purifies his midos, who purifies his ethical qualities, who lives an ethical, clean life, a life of midos, recognizing the quality of doing things for God's sake, not leaving your Yiddishkeit behind you in the Beis Medrash, in Shul, but taking it with you wherever you go, and recognizing that in order to receive the Torah, in order to be a Jew, you have to do these midos. Therefore, the explanation of this is, in addition to the aspect of the qualities, the ethical qualities, should be a haftu l'riacha kamocha of this statement, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Harehu gam klal gadol b'Torah. This is a great generality in the Torah. She'i efshar lahagia l'Torah. It's impossible to come to the Torah. U'lezachut l'kabel Torah, have the merit to receive the Torah. El b'koach yahavtu l'recha kamocha, except through the power of loving your neighbor as yourself. El b'koach yahavtu l'recha kamocha. Timidazu, this quality, shall habas Yisrael, of the love of Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel. the Torah Shlema b'fnei atzmo. That in itself is a complete Torah by itself. Shal yado, through it, masigo ish mi-Yisrael, a Jewish person is able to attain at or HaTorah, the light of the Torah. That seichel Torah and the wisdom of the Torah, she seichel Hashem, which is the wisdom of God. Ad larom ham'alot hi midas ahavas Hashem, to raise you up to a degree of loving Hashem. Hakol b'koach zu, all in this power, shu klal gadol b'agia l'kol Torah. It's a general principle to come to the Torah. So at the beginning, I said I was bothered by this remedy. Hashem tells us what we have to do to achieve Torah. We're going into Shavuot, is coming Motzi Shabbos. We're reenacting Kabbalas HaTorah. How do we do it? You have to have the Haftarach Kamocha. How do we do it? How do we get over the difficulty that is present in our society amongst Jews, between one Jew and the other? How do we get over the arguments? How do we get over the hatred that somebody has for another person because they don't agree with them? How do we get over the labeling somebody A or B because they don't follow what you want? How do we get over that? How do we get together? And how do we get to this point of V'haftarecha kamocha? I mean, I want to receive the Torah. I want to receive the Torah again. And I want to fulfill V'haftarecha kamocha. How do I do it with all the obstacles that are out there? I don't have an answer, except that we all have to look at ourselves as if my lack of love for my fellow Jew is what's keeping us from getting the Torah. And therefore we have to work hard ourselves to love every Jew, regardless of viewpoints, regardless of what they label themselves are, whether they label themselves as Hasidim, Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, non-believers, they're Jews. And we know that every Jew has a holy neshama. Sometimes these neshamas get caked with a little mud. And we have to use the love as a laser to pierce the mud in everybody's heart, to expose the beautiful heart, the beautiful neshama in everybody. So I'm not sure how we do it, except perhaps to start with ourselves. Those were some thoughts I had, and that's why I was bothered by this. And when I have one more little short Netivot Shalom I'm going to do. When we're finished, you might think about this and come up with some suggestions. I'd be happy to hear them at the end of this year. Anyway, let me go on. He goes on. There's another short piece here. It says in the Torah, in Shemot and Parsha Vayitro, it was in the third month that they came out of Egypt. Bayom Hazeh, on this day, Ba'u Midbar Sinai, they came to the wilderness of Sinai. Sheba'osu Bechinas, Sheyetzia Be'eretz Mitzrayim. They were in the aspect of coming out after 3 months, coming out of Mitzrayim. Coming out of Mitzrayim doesn't only mean leaving the physical land of Egypt. It means coming out of the bondage that was imposed, not only on your bodies, but on your mind. Coming out of the levels of Tumah that were in Mitzrayim. So here, 3 months later, in Egypt, before we left Mitzrayim, we were at the lowest level we are the 49th level of defilement. And And they came with this and got rid of it yet. This will still follow them into the desert. After all the preparations, after the days of Sphira, the 50 days until Shavuos, from Pesach till Shavuos, Adayalo Paskus o Mason. They hadn't gotten rid of their taint. Od Lohim Mechonim Kabbalah Torah. And they weren't yet ready to receive the Torah. They'd gone through all this. They're preparing for this. The whole purpose of coming out of Egypt was to receive the Torah, to be a chosen people to God, yet they weren't ready. This is what is written, Shalach Harav afterwards. It was before the Torah was given, the key sentence, Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Hahor. Bnei Yisrael camped, singular, not in the multitude of the hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, but as one person. Lashon Yachid, Neged Yachan. The sages say, Shohayu ish echad b'leiv echad. They were like one person with one heart. Klomer, Shematzavim hakasher kol kach. And their great difficulties that they've gone through. Shemlorot kol achana, sheichin kol echad. All the preparations they were making for this day. The efshar, not the right word. Kol echad is atzmo, himself, every person, the mei hasphira, in the days of Sphira, because there, even after all that preparation, Yishara Bechinas Tzeisim Eretz Mitzrayim, they remained in the aspect of still going out of Egypt. They hadn't gotten it out of their blood yet. They weren't roi, they weren't fitting to receive the Torah. This was the advice, Yechida, the unique advice, Vayichan Sham Yisrael. They had to be one. They had to camp there as one. Ish echad b'leiv echad, one person, one heart. Who may also shine from that moment that they became Ish echad b'leiv echad. And further, Hitchilu Higalot Orot Shokar Kabbalah Torah. Then began the revelation of the light of receiving the Torah. And then afterwards it says, "O Moshe Olo El Hashem, Elokim." Moshe went up to Hashem, the Paskus Omasam, and they got rid of their taints. This aspect of getting out of Mitzrayim, getting out of your own personal Mitzrayim, getting out of the habits that are keeping you a slave to anything other than Hashem. That's something that we have to work on every year. And it's every year, every person. Because Yehudi Omer L'Kabbalah Torah, when we stand to receive the Torah, after all this preparation, you see, you see that you're not yet fit to receive the Torah. The advice for that person is Vayichan Sham Yisrael b'leiv echad k'ish echad, to be like one person and one heart. She'istyacha b'koach harabim, to unify with the power of the Rabbim. Through this, Yochel lageshes like Kabbalah Torah, you're able to receive the Torah with the power of the many. Koach harabim, the power of the many. Omer le'ish Yehudi, the power of the many stands for a Jew. Ace shekolel atzmo b'klal Yisrael, when you are considering yourself part of this entity, this unity called Klal Yisrael, the peoplehood of Israel. Muvatel es atzmo l'tzibur, you are nullifying yourself to this congregation of Klal Yisrael, Aboim Kulam, the Bris Yachid, everybody coming together in one covenant. Asher Elam Rak Ratzon Echad, there's only one desire, Sheyafo Achas, and one intent. Shehi Barchenu Avidu Kulanu Echad, or Panecha. Bless us, our Father, as we are together with the light of your countenance. Just like every step, every one of the steps of Kabbalah Satorah are eternal. Not just happened in the Midbar, not just happens every Shavuos, but it happens all the time. It's eternal. Cain, similarly, Gam Hachana Kabbalah Satorah, so too the preparation for receiving the Torah is believe Echad, Ish Echad, when you're like one person, one heart, he nitzchis. That's eternal. Shezeh maybe the call Hasegos, Hagavos, that brings you to all the high levels, those chadshos, and to be able to renew Kabbalah Satorah, receiving of the Torah, the Shaicha B'chol Shana B'Shana, that comes again, give us the opportunity to receive it anew every single year. So that's what the Netivot Shalom has to say. Vichan Sham Yisrael. How do we get to that aspect? What can I do? What can you do? What can we all do together to reach that aspect of Ahavas Yisrael? I mean, there's a lot of social media out there. Can you spread a message of love on your social media? I actually saw a message today in our shchuna that somebody was wishing us a happy Rosh Chodesh Sivan, and love, blessings and love for all. I don't know. I'll be happy to take your comments. I'll stop the video, and then you can comment if you want. 1 second.